let's talk Game of Wool. So hello and welcome back. We've got a little bit more light this week for a look at some alternative patterns for Game of Wool type projects from episodes 3 and 4. So that's Holiday Week and Children's Week. A previous Game of Wool video looked at the first couple of episodes. I still think there are some issues with the format of the show, and mostly, to be fair, in my opinion, with the tagline, because it's misleading. But these are not review videos. There will probably be some comments as we work our way through, because why not? But mostly this is about looking at patterns that are available that you could use to create similar projects to the ones in the show. I haven't seen any swimwear pattern kits being released or deck chair ones, unsurprisingly. There are apparently some of the kids' costumes from Children's Week coming out with Serdar, but they have also stated that how they are compensating the people who actually designed them and when the rights will revert back to them. So thumbs up to Serdar for being upfront and fully transparent there. But I haven't seen those kits myself. I've just heard about it on the grapevine, as it were. So Holiday Week, which for those of you across the pond is vacations, not Christmas, Easter, Halloween. The contestants for their solo challenge had to knit or crochet swimwear. And the group challenge, the team challenge, was crocheting. It had to be crocheting a deck chair. Now, they did have on a crochet specialist judge in the form of Janie Crow, which is great if you're going to have a crochet specific challenge in the knitting competition. Then, of course, get on a specialist judge, absolutely, rather than the standard knitting judges. I do think she was a little underused this week in that they could have had both challenges being crochet. They had like a crochet week with a guest judge on because it's crochet. But again, tagline is Britain's best knitter, not Britain's best yarn star, or Britain's best stitcher, or Britain's best yarnista. So Britain's best knitter. Knitting and crochet are separate crafts. I wouldn't expect Tom Daley to do the 100 metres individual medley as a diver, as they both happen in the pool. It's not how it works. They're not the same discipline. So, moving on to Holiday Week. So we did see a mixture of knitted and crocheted projects for the first challenge, the solo challenge, and they were modelled by members of the Team GB Olympic diving squad. Now, I don't know about you, but I do not have the physique of an Olympic diver. So if I was going to be knitting or crocheting swimwear, not sure it'd be quite as skimpy as some of the projects that came out on Game of Wool. But some of them were impressive. Some of them were incredibly impressive, to be fair. Now, knitting swimwear is not a new thing. I think I mentioned briefly last time around that my grandmother knit my dad a swimming costume in like the 50s, 60s, something like that. That's kind of the era that he would have been of an age to wear stuff his mum had knitted him at the beach. And it didn't fare too well in the water. Problem with knitting and crochet when you're doing it by hand is the fibres that you use can get very heavy when they get wet. So you have to be sort of really careful with what fibres you are choosing if you're going to be making functional swimwear that's designed to go in the water. These days we have much finer knitted, lighter, more water resistant fabrics to use for swimwear. So you might find people who sew making their own swimwear. I haven't, but I'm not planning on it. But that exists. I think it's probably a better choice for homemade functional swimwear. If, however, you're doing swimwear for sunbathing and posing and going to the bar with a pair of shorts over the top when you're on holiday, that's a different matter. So that's kind of how I'm envisaging some of these knit and crochet swimwear projects to be used. So we're going to start by looking at some vintage patterns for swimwear, just to show you that these are a thing. It's not a new concept. It's not people trying to be trendy. So if we start with this H5204/06, which just rolls off the tongue. This is by Verlag Otto Bayer design team. I like the way they're using the stripes to create interesting lines on this particular swimming costume. This has got much more coverage than some of the ones that were done on Game of War. So this is more my sort of vibe when it comes to swimwear. That's a knitted piece from 1952. The next one is by Patterns and Baldwin, and this is from 1950. This is a swim set. Again, it's got interesting patterning on it. I can see that being a nice little set to sort of lounge around in. I can see people wearing the top with a pair of like jean shorts as a posing kind of outfit, or going to the bar, or just as general sort of summer wear. It's a really nice stitch pattern that they've got there. That's in fingering weight, as well, the other one was in sport weight. And the third female vintage swimwear project that I found is this Bathing Suit 134 by Monarch Knitting. So that's from 1935. So more coverage on the bottom, kind of like a swim skirt kind of effect, but a lot of exposure on the back, which always takes me a little bit by surprise when we're looking at pre-World War II kind of outfits. I kind of still have in my head that they're going to be covered up like the Victorians. A little bit more exposure, skin exposure in this time period. So vintage swimwear as hand knit projects was a thing. Those are all knitting projects. I mean, I haven't come across any crocheted ones of that era. So if you want to go with the knitted vibe for a bit of women's swimwear, there's a few options. In fact, there's quite a lot of options of swimwear, mostly crochet to be fair, available on Ravelry, which is where all these patterns have been found. I'm sure they are available elsewhere as well. So for the knitting ones, we've got quite a vintage feel to the ones that I've found mostly. So this first one feels very much in the vein of that 1930s one, which is a dashing little swimsuit by Susan Crawford. This is from A Stitch in Time Knitting and Crochet Patterns, 1920 to 1949. So that sort of is the era that's being evoked for this little swim dress. Horse neck on it, buttons on it, nice little textured pattern for the knit stitches. So that's very sweet. And again, it would look great if you're sort of wandering around by the beach, by the pool, having a bit of sunbathe, a little bit of drink at the bar. Much more coverage than you get for a lot of swimsuits today, so you wouldn't need to have like a coverall to go with it. The next one is a bikini, so this gives me more sort of 70s vibes. I like the coverage on the bottoms of these 0443 mermaid stripes, which is a drops design pattern. So this is from 2001, so although it's not technically what I would consider vintage, it's verging on the vintage for the kids these days, though. They keep telling me that the 90s fashion is vintage, which I object to. So yeah, halter neck, shorts, so again, a nice sort of pootling around. I can see Barbie vibes with this one. Roller skates down the beachfront in, Malibu. Not that I've ever been to Malibu, but that's the vibe I'm getting. Malibu Barbie in knitwear. So a rather sweet little pattern. And the third and final female knitted swimwear pattern. And by female, I mean people who have busts and curves. Gidget Goes Hawaiian for this bikini. Now this has given me 50s vibes. It's a pattern from 2014, so much more recently. It's by The Thrifty Knitter, or on the Thrifty Knitter Ravelry store. Naughty Needles is the other one, the other sort of brand name that's coming up in the published section. The designer of this one is Nicole Law. I do like the look of this one. It's very pin-up. Naughty Needles is a sort of pin-up style pattern book by the look of it. Very, very sort of 1950s pin-up, almost Bond girl kind of a vibe coming off this bikini. I think it works really well in the red as well. So that's 3 knitted pieces for swimwear. I will get on some crochet ones in a minute. Now, gents, there's not so much available in terms of swimwear patterns. So it may well be, go with a pair of shorts. I did see one pattern that was essentially budgie smugglers, but the pattern was no longer available. So they've knitted up in a very bright green with a very suspect angle on the photo on Ravelry, so not including those here. But here we have a men's 1930s swimming trunk. So this is from Susan Crawford. It's one of her vintage patterns from 2013, and they are very much a shorts style swimming trunks. So again, they'd work well with a halter top or a bra top for someone with more of a bust to deal with. So yeah, nice sort of vintage pattern, but yeah, there really wasn't a great deal of choice of specifically swimwear patterns for those of you that don't need bras. So yeah, so that's your pick really. But yeah, like I say, any shorts pattern would work to get the same sort of vibe going. So moving on to the crochet options, because people were knitting and crocheting the swimwear, there was an awful lot of choice for this. So I've just picked a few. So let's start with the Third Eye bikini. So we're using granny squares, granny triangles for the tops and stripes for the bottom. So we've got the coverage going on there. Do like that there's a thicker band of squares underneath the bust line for what would otherwise be a very sort of typical triangle bikini top. So it's giving a slight twist on that style. This one's by Leonie Jean, and it's a June 2025 pattern, so a very recent pattern. Next up is the Shell Stitch Monokini, so a one piece. This gives a little bit more of the vibe of one of the knitted swimsuits from the show. I think it was Lydia's. But this is a crochet pattern to lace around the middle, lace across the bust line. That's also, it looks like a scale stitch, shell stitch kind of texture. So yeah, I quite liked that for those of you who are sort of a bit more fashion forward. I personally would want a little bit more coverage around the middle, and this would give you interesting tan lines. But I think for if your vibe is more sort of fashion forward, more sort of trendy, this would work really nicely for you. Following that, we have the Secret Island Tankini by Michaela Bond. So this is more my sort of a vibe. It's the top rather than the bottom, so you need to pair it with something. Sportwear pattern by Michaela Bond, published in 2020. So yeah, a bit more coverage, but the flexibility of a bikini rather than a one piece. So I think that's quite a nice one to go with. And then we have the Chevron Swimsuit by McCall Pattern Company. So again, a lot more coverage. This is a 1980 pattern, so you can see the it's not the like super high gladiator leg swimsuits that you sometimes got in the 70s and 80s. It's a bit more coverage, but more sort of in line with what I think of for 80s swimsuits. They were much lower cut on the bottom for those of us who were like normal people and not film stars and models. I quite like the chevron approach to this one. So yeah, quite a sweet little pattern. And the final crochet swimwear pattern for this week is just the top. Again, you can pair it with any sort of bottoms. This is the Nora Bikini by Marika Tark. Again, I like that it's got the band underneath, got some interesting texture going on there. It is a crochet, but it's got the coverage of a bit of knit, with the way that it's been structured. So an elevated triangle bikini top. And the way that it's styled in these pictures with the shirt and the jean shorts, that's very much how I kind of picture crochet swimwear and knit swimwear being worn, rather than being for sort of doing laps. So yeah, I quite like some of those. Whether I'll make any of them remains to be seen. I live in the UK. I can't see there being a ton of days where I'm going to get a lot of wear out of knit or crochet swimwear. So the team challenge in week 3 was to crochet deck chairs. Obviously, I was not expecting to find any patterns for deck chairs. I was wrong. I found 2. First up, it's not a deck chair, a functional deck chair, but it's a deck chair panel. So this is an Afghan block, a blanket square, in crochet by Sally Winnett, so Dipsy and Dotty, of a bit of intarsia crochet, or tapestry crochet she's described it as. So it's a 17 inches by 19 inches in the yarn that they've used. So they've held 2 strands of DK double. But yeah, picture representation of a deck chair in crochet. That is more than I was expecting to find for deck chairs, but that is not all that I found. I did actually find a knitting pattern by Heather Garlock, Ginger Weatherby and Juanita Grout. So this is published in From Start to Finish part 52. And this is a knit patchwork deck chair cover. So not crochet, but a knitted deck chair cover. And I did not think I would find a yarn deck chair cover at all. But there is one. It is in existence. So if you wanted to have a go at making a deck chair for on your terrace or your balcony or your patio or the little square of weed-filled grass that you've got out the back of your house, there is a pattern available that you can use. So that was week 3. It was entertaining, it was fun, it made me raise a few eyebrows at some of the designs, particularly the swimwear. Yeah, not kind of challenges I would have thought of putting in to a knitting competition, but hey ho. Week 4, so this was last Sunday, was Children's Week. So the first challenge, the solo challenge, they had to crochet. So knitting competition. Second challenge that they had to crochet only, not adding crochet embellishments on, but pure crochet challenge. Toddler fancy dress costumes. Fine, not a problem with the challenge, rather sweet. The kids looked adorable, the kids loved it. And the group challenge was a knitted wall hanging that they used the game, we used to call it Consequences, where you draw like parts of a body, like and different people draw different parts. That was how they came up with their design well, they weren't sort of strictly told they had to knit, but most people knitted. I think only one person crocheted for these wall hangings that they did in teams. There was a team of 3 and a team of 4. So here's my question, Channel 4. You knew there was going to be one. If you saw the last one, you knew there was going to be at least one question for Channel 4 in the process of this. If you had Janie Crow in as a guest judge in episode 3 for the group challenge, which was a crochet challenge, why did you not have a crochet specialist judge for the solo challenge of week 4, which was a crochet only challenge? Could you not have put those 2 challenges together and had a crochet week with the guest judge for the whole show? Surely that would have been a better use of Janie Crow's time. Anywho, kids fancy dress costumes in crochet. Again, there's quite a few of these around. Not as many patterns for kids costumes in knitting and crochet as I expected, but there was quite a few. There were also quite a few for adults as well. A lot of them are just like accessories rather than a full costume. I haven't specifically stuck to the costumes that the contestants did in the show. There was a fox, there was a lion, there was a knight, there was a crayon, and there was an explorer. There was a bumblebee. So yeah, they're very sweet patterns. So I've not specifically stuck to that. I've just gone for ones I thought looked quite fun. So I think they're all crochet. Yeah, they're all crochet ones that I've found. So first up we have the Horsey Skirt by Lisa Van Claveren. So this costume makes it look like you are riding a horse. It made me think of the hobby horse competitions, the international hobby horse show jumping competitions. It also made me think of the game I used to play with a primary school friend where we didn't even have hobby horses. We just ran around a field jumping over horse jumps, as you do. But I can see kids like us loving this costume, where you put your legs in and they become the horse's feet and you've got little crocheted feet for the person riding it on top. Adorable. so adorable. I can imagine hours of fun playing this, as well as it being a nice little Halloween, not too scary costume for kids as well, if you're not doing the scary form of Halloween, which is more typical in the UK. Probably not so much now, but when I was a kid, we were all ghosts and witches and cats. We weren't superheroes and princesses. I can remember being a devil when I was about 5 as well for Halloween. So yeah, we didn't go in for characters so much. But things are changing. Things are changing. So yeah, I can see this one working quite well. Next up, I have the Butterfly Halloween costume by MJ's Off the Hook Designs. So this one, it's a very sweet crocheted hat with antenna on, and very much a sort of cape approach to the butterfly wings. Little mittens on the corners for the kids' hands to go in so they can flap the wings themselves. Really sweet little detail. My third child's crochet costume pattern is the Cooking Katie Chef Set by Marie Murray and Rosemary Fagan. So that's in Maggie's Crochet website. So this was a very sweet little apron and chef's hat. So one that kids can really play with. It's got accessories with it as well, which I thought was very sweet. So it can go into an imaginative play box, a role play dress up box for kids to play with, as well as being good for fancy dress parties, Halloween and all that kind of thing. So yeah, very sweet. Following on from that, in line with, again, I think it might have been Lydia, either Lydia or Ailsa that did a zebra pattern. I've found a giraffe crochet costume by Carla Medda. So this is trousers with a tail, a little jumper and a hat with the spots on it. So yeah, very, very sweet. It is currently discontinued, so you may have to do a bit of hunting around and mix and match and stuff to try and find something that'll work, but you get the general sort of gist of where we're going with that one. Next up we have the It's a Hoot Owl Hat and Cape by Nancy Anderson. So this is a Yarnspirations pattern. This kid is loving this costume, absolutely loving it. But yeah, big hat with big owl eyes on it and a little shoulder cape for the wings. So yeah, very sweet. Put the kid in an outfit that matches the colour of the cape. That's your Halloween costume sorted. And the final crochet kids costume pattern that I found is again on Yarnspirations, this time designed by Ellen Gormley, and it's the Medieval Prince. So we have a very if you saw when Queen Elizabeth died and Charles got elevated to being king, if you saw all the announcements and all the pageantry that went along with that, the tabard that this kid's costume has got very much reminds me of the outfits that the officials were wearing for that whole bit of pageantry that we had. So, I mean, these are outfits that haven't changed since the Middle Ages, so very much in keeping. I like the little cape, I like the little crown. The kid's holding a sword. I so hope the sword can be made as well. Okay, the pattern includes crown, vest, belt, cape, gauntlets and leg armour. So not the sword, sadly. But I'm sure you can find a sword somewhere for your child if they want to be a medieval prince. But yeah, very sweet pattern. So yeah, that section wasn't too bad to find patterns for. Neither was the group challenge for this week. I haven't gone down the consequences version with the different sections that then get pieced together for the wall hangings. But I did think, what would I actually want to do as a wall hanging for a child's room or otherwise? I mean, they specifically were tasked with interactive, sensory wall hangings for a child's room. One of them I think would scare children more than encourage them to be interactive with it. But hey-ho. The concept was nice. I liked the idea of them using the consequences to create a pattern. I liked the idea of them each working on their own distinct section and pairing it together. I still don't understand why group challenges are marked, judged, blind. I'm a drama teacher. It's hard enough to assess people's performance when you can see what they are doing in a group. Trying to do it blind, they could have done a different sort of challenge for the blind testing, the blind judging. They could have done swatches. They could have done pattern challenges to look at like how well they get gauge and how they keep tension and how neat their stitches are. Can they actually do the technique that you are asking them to do? Can they follow a chart? All of that sort of stuff would have made a better blind judged challenge, but they've only got an hour, so. So, patterns that I found for wall hangings. I've got a mixture of knit and crochet ones. I automatically went crochet when I started looking, because I was like, if I was going to do a wall hanging, would I do it in knit or would I do it in crochet? I'd probably do it in crochet, possibly tapestry crochet. So we've got a mixture. So let's start with crochet ones. We have this Monstera Leaf Tapestry by Indigo Madness. I like the way they've used the colour. I like that one of the samples has the two-tone background. In fact, they all seem, it's like it is a two-tone in both examples, actually. So yeah, they've got a diagonal line across the middle of the crochet panel of the background colour changing, and then the leaf in a single consistent colour. So I thought that was nice and effective for any plant parents out there, or people like me who like having plants but are not very good at keeping them alive. I have several pots with, well, at the moment I have a couple of pots that used to have living plants in. I have some that have still got living plants in, but yeah, there are always some that the plant's not made it. But anywho, next up on the tapestry crochet end of the wall hangings, we have a Luffy crochet pattern by Hooked Alchemist. So this is a one-piece inspired bit of fandom art, and it just shows you what you can do with crochet. The lines are crisp. Yes, there's a bit of pixelation on it because it is effectively pixel art, but you can tell exactly what it is. We've got shading going in there as well, with the where they've got the shadow falling across it. I mean, very cartoon style, but given the source material, that's to be expected. It's a manga, I believe originally, could be anime, but I think it came from manga. So yeah, the pixelated cartoon style works really well for the subject matter. But yeah, like I said, it just shows you what crochet is capable of achieving. As does the pattern by Crochet that I'm going to attempt to pronounce, Warabongdo, which is a landscape pattern. So it's based on a Korean, they're describing it as a Korean folding screen with a stylised painting. So I don't know how big that's going to... 10 inch by 8 inch, so it's not huge. But yeah, Korean inspired bit of crochet art there. So you've got layers of crochet there. Rather than it being the tapestry, they're laying the crochet on top of each other. In a similar sculptural vein for crochet, it really does give you an idea of where crochet strengths are. Yes, you can make great crochet garments and blankets and what have you, but you can also do this. Floral Coral Reef Wall Hanging by White Owl Knot. I mean, look at it. This is what I would have wanted to see for a sensory wall hanging on Game of Wool. But given that there's no prep time, there's no pre-planning, there's no pre-designing for the makers, for the knitters and crocheters on the show, I can see why they went for more of a flat panel in the time constraints as well. But I mean, little elements of this would have been good. So moving on to a couple of knitting wall hangings, which are equally impressive. First up, we have the Sunflower and Bees wall hanging. I thought this one fit the Inner Child's Room brief very, very well. This is by Val Pierce. It's on the Woolbox website. I could see this being adapted for a height chart, to be fair. So we've got a flat panel in the background, and then we've got what looks like appliqued ladybirds, bees, beehive, leaves, sunflowers, all the way up it. So very sweet. I like the little tab approach they've got for attaching it to the pole that you're going to hang it off as well at the top, so that works really nicely. And my final wall hanging, if you thought the 3D crochet wall hangings were impressive, and you wanted something similar, but you don't crochet, so you want something as impressive. It's a bit of a sort of wow project, but in knitting, I present The Sword of Damocles by Grace Lindley. Colourwork, pictorial, looks impressive. I suspect this is, it might be double knit. Skim down the thing. Yeah, double knit piece. So you've got two sides to this. So you could hang it like a medieval pennant in the middle of the room, or you could hang it against a wall and just have one side showing. But this is really going to make people go, oh, okay, that's what knitting can do. So yeah, so that's my thoughts of potential patterns that you could use to make similar projects to those seen in Game of Wool episodes 3 and 4. Don't get me wrong, I do get a bit snarky about the show, and there are things I think could be better in it. But there is a lot of potential in the show. I am enjoying it as a piece of entertainment, as a representation of what knitting and crochet is capable of. We're not quite there. As a vehicle for Tom Daley as a presenter, I think they've done him a disservice by not giving him a partner. But yeah, I mean, I think the show does have potential. I just think some stuff has maybe not quite been thought through in terms of how it's going to be received by people who actually know how to knit and crochet. For people who don't know how to knit and crochet, or were maybe sort of thinking of picking up the needle or a hook, it's great. It's going to give them a bit of inspiration. Fantastic. As a bit of entertainment for people who want to see what knitting and crochet is about but not really interested in doing it, yeah, fine. But for people who knit and crochet, it's not quite got to where we would like it to be, in my opinion. But anywho, this is not, as I say, a review channel. I'm probably not going to do a standalone review video. Maybe when it's all over, but I'm not planning to at the moment. So yeah, so there's my patterns for episodes 3 and 4. I will be back in a couple of weeks with episodes 5 and 6. I cannot remember what next week's theme is. I think it's something to do with food. So that'll be interesting. And yeah, if you're viewing it as a piece of entertainment, as just Sunday primetime TV to round off your weekend before you start the working week, yeah, fine. Anywho, yep, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. In the meantime, there's this one here that may be of interest to you too, and I will see you soon. But until then, happy crafting, and bye-bye for now.